Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Adam Hardiman with the Regional Municipality of Buffalo. I'd like to welcome you to this question and answer session here on Facebook with Mayor Scott and some of my colleagues here with administration. We know it's been a difficult few days, and in ramping up our communication efforts, we want to make sure that we're sharing as much information as possible, as well as answering the questions that you have about this historic event. You're going to hear today from Mayor Don Scott, our CAO Jamie Doyle, our DCAO Matthew Huff, as well as myself, as we take the next hour to answer some of your questions on Facebook. So please get those questions in, but before we get to our questions, I want to ask Mayor Scott to make some opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Adam. And I just want to take a moment to acknowledge and thank all those who have helped out with this flood. This is a situation that I don't think anybody in this region has seen in a generation. I talked to an elder who had been here for 80 years, and he said that neither he nor his parents had ever described a flood of this significance. So what we are experiencing this year is a 1 in 100 year flood. So the timing is obviously horrible because we are also experiencing the COVID pandemic at the exact same time. So we are in a situation that has never happened before in this region, and there's never, quite frankly, been anything like it. But if there's any region that can get through a challenge like this, it is our region. You know, we've dealt with the fire. Before the fire, there was a precipitation flood in 2013. Back in 1997, we dealt with a flood that was not like this. In 1977, there was a flood that was comparable, but still not like this. And at that time, there was not a pandemic. So we are dealing with a situation that is totally unique here. And I just want to take a moment to thank all the first responders, all the municipal employees, all those who were involved in helping make sure that people have been getting out of their homes safely and dealing with this situation. I'm going to read a few facts, and then we're going to go to questions. I want to let everybody know that I'm going to do my best to answer questions, but there may be some questions that I cannot answer. And if that's the case, then we're going to be coming and doing this regularly. I'll be coming back with answers, so there will be answers that will be forthcoming. So the total public that have been evacuated are 12,936. There's 270 first responders and emergency personnel that have been deployed. A lot of people don't realize that we have had first responders who have come in from Syncrude who have also been helping, and I'm just so grateful. I extended my thanks and the thanks to the community for all the help that they've been giving. There's 95 pieces of machinery and equipment deployed. There's 12,200 sandbags that have been deployed. There's 5,300 sandbags that have been staged. There's 3,300 units of damming material that have been staged. There's 1,670 camp rooms that are occupied. There's 1,022 camp rooms available. We have 124 hotel rooms occupied. We still have 137 hotel rooms available. And the registered evacuees are currently over 6,000. So of the 12,936 that have been evacuated, some of them are staying with friends and family, and some have gone to other locations, including the south. The information that is available, and the best source of information, is on the municipal website, rmwb.ca. If you also follow the social media for the municipality, you will find information. Many of you will know that the Premier was here yesterday along with Minister Nixon, and a couple of issues that I want to address to make sure that people are aware of it. I talked about the use of the military and whether it was possible to blow up the ice jam that was happening. What was explained to me is that because the ice jam is approximately 25 kilometers, now it shrunk overnight, so it shrunk by a little over a kilometer last night, so it's a little bit smaller and it's darkened, so things seem to be improving in that way. Because of the length of the ice jam, using dynamite or explosives or calling in a CF-18 is not an option in this situation. There is, in fact, no engineered solution, is the way it was relayed to me by Minister Nixon. If there was an engineered solution, we'd be taking it, we'd be doing it. The people of this region, there's no one more resourceful than the people of this region, so we'd be taking advantage of everything we could do. So please be aware of that. We did make a large number of requests of the province. That included things like sandbags, included lots of help that we're looking for going forward. So we did make our requests. What the Premier assured me about is that they are going to do everything within their power to support this region. So I felt very comfortable with the discussion we had. He had a flyover of the downtown in a helicopter, and he saw the devastation firsthand, so he knows the difficulties that this region is facing and the challenges that the people of this region are facing. So I just want to let you know that the provincial government was supportive. I also had a discussion with Bill Blair, who is the Minister of Public Safety for the federal government. Now, he has indicated that he is very supportive as well. So we have support from both levels of government. Both the province and the federal government are ready to lend support as needed. And I have full faith and confidence in our emergency team. We have been having a lot of discussions, and there's a lot of work to be done, obviously. And this is stage one, making sure that people get out safely. But at this stage, I'm just very pleased to see that people have calmly relocated. And I just want to thank the residents who relocated. It is very, very important that everybody complies with not only the public health order, but with the order to evacuate. And that's one of the big challenges we're facing. On the one hand, the public health orders initially said stay at home. Now you've got an evacuation order saying we'd like you to relocate. That's part of the challenge that we're facing in this region. But if there's any region that can face a challenge, as I said, it's us. We don't control Mother Nature, but we can certainly control our response to it. And we are going to respond effectively and do, a great job and come through this in a just fine way. So I would just encourage everyone to pay attention to all the updates that are coming out from rmwb.ca. I did get an update from the Premier this morning and from Minister Nixon. The water levels did rise slightly this morning, but we did see some movement of the ice as well. So there is some things happening. There was darkening of the ice, and as I said earlier, the ice piece that is jammed shrunk a bit overnight. So there is some improvements. There's reason for optimism, I believe. So that is happening, but we're waiting on Mother Nature. We have a few days of warm weather in the forecast, so lots of reason to be optimistic going forward. So for all those who've been evacuated and for all those who are suffering damage, just know that your government is with you, your mayor and council is with you, and we're going to be here to support you through this challenging time. Thank you very much, Adam.
Okay, well, thank you, Mayor Scott. It's great to be back with you. So we're going to get to our Q&A. Like I said, we have Mayor Scott as well as our Chief Administrative Officer, Jamie Doyle, and our Deputy Chief Administrative Officer, Matthew Huff, to take all your questions. I understand there's over 1,000 people on the line with us with their questions, so thank you so much for joining us. You're going to be able to see this as a regular feature of what we're doing going forward, in addition to all those great updates at rmwb.ca, including a new sign-up feature at rmwb.ca/flood update. So we're going to go to our first question. If we can get something here. So this question, we got two here, so I'll start. They're both about the hospital. So our first question is from Jillian Jackman. Is the hospital safe? So I'll actually send that to Matthew Huff, our Deputy Chief Administrative Officer, if that's okay.
Good day, everyone. One thing to understand is that our RMWB emergency personnel are working side by side with Alberta Health Services, and we have been told that indeed the hospital is safe and is in full operation. There was a great deal of work put in yesterday by staff, by volunteers, to ensure that sandbagging was in place near the hospital itself, but as of this moment the hospital is in full operation. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Jillian, for the question. So there was a bit of a similar question from Amanda Dudier, and I'm sorry if I pronounced your name incorrectly. So Mayor Scott's going to come up and address, I guess, the same theme around the hospital, but I'll just read Amanda's question first, Mayor. Why are the reports being made that infrastructure, specifically the hospital, is being reinforced by the city when it was all volunteers last night, with the exception of sandbags and one load of sand? So we're going to have the mayor speak to the hospital in general, but maybe we'll have Matthew or Jamie come back up on the specifics of how that's happening operationally. I think the main thing is that we have a great number of volunteers in the community, and as well as our municipal staff working to make it happen. We're all working together. So Mayor Scott first, and followed by administration.
Sure, I just want to let everybody know that I've been in touch with Murray Crawford throughout the day today. There's a number of issues that have been coming up. One is the reinforcement of the hospital. But what he has assured me is that the hospital is fully operational, and at this point they are not considering. They're watching where the flood levels are, but they do not consider the risk severe at this time or high. So I would just say that The other issue that's come up, and I just want to address it right away, is whether long-term care clients are being evacuated from the hospital. I asked Murray Crawford that directly, and the answer that I received, I'm just going to read it out. Yes, in a phased approach. They are the most complex to move, and COVID is making it harder. We're just trying to prepare in the event we have to evacuate. I anticipate being open for the duration. So that was a message from Murray Crawford, and he was just explaining why they were relocating those who were in long-term care. And I wanted to relay that information to all of you because I know that question has been coming up. And I believe one of my colleagues may be answering the question at hand.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. To quickly answer the question about the sandbagging, so what I've seen over the last 72 hours is the strength of our volunteer community, and they certainly showed that last night. Once the evacuation order was put out there, volunteers were asked to leave, of course, due to safety, and then city staff stepped in and started to continue that sandbagging effort to protect that hospital.
So thank you for that, Mayor Scott, as well as CAO Doyle. So we have our next set of questions. So these ones are all about water and water quality. So I'm going to read all three of them, and then I'll probably ask Matthew Huff, our Deputy Chief Administrative Officer, to take these. So first question is from Diane Lund, or Lundy. I'm sorry once again if I'm mispronouncing your name. Danielle Dureau and Kathy DeRoche. So kind of three separate water questions. I'll read them all, Matthew, and then perhaps we can just respond. Is the water treatment plant in jeopardy? Please explain the water quality. And why is the water brown? So, DCO Huff, you could take that.
Again, hello. To answer the first question, is the water treatment plant in jeopardy? No, it is not. The question of whether the water is safe brings up a key question with regards to why there is a boil water advisory. So I'm going to go through a couple of particulars with regard to this, and there is plenty more information available, and I'll give you some contact website and phone numbers for that. So Alberta Health Services has directed the Regional Municipality of Wood Buffalo to expand a boil water advisory from Fort McMurray neighborhoods north of the Athabasca Bridge to include all of Fort McMurray, Anzac, Draper, Fort McMurray First Nations 468, GLE, and Sapre Creek Estates. The advisory does not include the communities of Conklin, Fort Chippewa, Fort Fitzgerald, Fort McKay, or Janvier. As per AHS guidelines, water can be safely consumed after bringing it to a rapid boil for 1 minute. We are hearing and seeing that in some areas of the region there is discolored water. Alberta Health Services is aware and continues to maintain the boil water advisory. Alberta Health Services has indicated that if individuals are properly boiling the water, it will be safe, even if there is continued discoloration. Now, for general information about how to use water safely during a boil water advisory, take a look at www.albertahealthservices.ca or call AHS's Health Link at 811. Water in the affected area is safe for bathing and general use. Under a boil water advisory, tap water that has not been boiled should not be used for the following: drinking, cooking, making baby formula, making ice, washing fruits or vegetables, brushing teeth, and for pets. Please note, if you did fill jugs, your bathtub, containers, etc. with water on Sunday, it is still recommended that the water is boiled. I can assure you that our staff, again, are working very closely with the Alberta government officials to ensure that the boil water advisory is lifted as quickly as possible. Testing continues on a continual basis to ensure the safety of all. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Mr. Huff, and thank you to everyone for your questions so far. We know we have over 1,000 people there, so if you want to ask a question, just type it into the Facebook page underneath the video, and we'll sure to try to get that out. Of course, there's a number of questions. We won't be able to answer them all, but we'll do our best to group themes and make sure that the main themes and ideas that you have, will address them. So we'll go to our next set of questions. Thank you. So, I think this one will also be for our Deputy Chief Administrative Officer, Mr. Huff. This question's from Danielle Mercer, so thanks, Danielle. Can we get a berm built now? So Danielle, forgive me if I'm inferring a bit, but I guess you're referring to downtown, obviously, based on what's happened along the Clearwater. So I'll allow Matthew Huff to speak to some of the work that's already been done and what our plans are in that regard.
The flood mitigation program has been underway now for several years, and most of you will have noticed that the Clearwater Drive by the Snipe Park is quite a higher elevation than any area around it. That section of road is actually a flood mitigation berm. The work is set to continue. This summer there will be additional sections of berms built. Of course, I recognize that that's little solace for those who are impacted by this flood now. However, the flood mitigation program is robust, and what we witnessed as the floodwaters rose is the berm itself operating as designed. So we are going to continue with that and consult heavily with the public in the coming months about those plans. Thanks.
Thanks, Danielle, for the question. Thank you, Matthew. So we're going to continue on. This question is business related, probably best for our our Chief Administrative Officer, Jamie Doyle, and maybe the Mayor would like to weigh in as well following that. It's from Craig Hamner. So Craig, thank you. What is the plan for businesses flooding into the RMWB, I guess meaning coming to town, to try and scavenge work profit and then fleeing with jobs like after the fire? So I think it's a question about local business and how that's going to work. So Jamie, if you want to take that, maybe Mayor Scott would like to weigh in on our support for small business.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you for the question. It is a very good one. Our RECC is using a direct procurement process, and we are using local contractors wherever possible.
Okay. Hey everyone, I can tell you that Mayor and Council are very concerned about this issue, and we have asked and directed those in charge of the recovery efforts and responding to this flood that local contractors be the priority. That's got to be the case. Now sometimes when there's huge contracts, there's other issues that might come up later when there are agreements between provinces that we have to comply with, but as far as I'm concerned and as far as my colleagues are concerned, we're going to use local contractors at every opportunity, and that's the way it should be, quite frankly.
Well, thank you for the question, and thank you, Jamie, as well as Mayor Scott. The next question is really about recovery. Of course, currently we're in the response phase, as our Director of Emergency Management, Scott Davis, has told us and continues to tell us as we continue to respond to this 1 in 100 year event. This question is from Gert Pondick, and I guess I'll send this one over to you, Jamie, probably best from the CAO. When the water subsides, what is the plan for evacuees to return to their properties? So maybe Jamie, you can or I guess Jamie has had to step out. So we'll ask DCAO Huff or Mayor Scott. Mayor Scott can come forward and just speak generally about what recovery will look like as we move beyond response. And Matthew, if you have another supplementary to that, go right ahead. Mayor Scott?
Yeah, I'm happy to say that. We want people back in their properties as quickly as possible. You know, it's going to be a phased approach. We want to make sure that properties are safe. So there's going to need to be inspections. People are going to need to make sure that they're going back into safe properties. We don't want anyone going into harm's way. We still have a pandemic on the go. So it's going to be a phased approach. It's going to take time. That's the number one question I asked the province yesterday, who are monitoring the river, is, you know, when can we expect this to break up? I had a sense that I wouldn't get a straight answer, and that was the case. No one can tell us when this ice jam is going to go away. As soon as it does, we're going to be getting people back in their homes and their properties, and we want businesses up and going as quickly as possible. One thing I want to mention to people, if you are impacted by this flood in any way, please take a look at your insurance policy. I've talked to some insurance companies in town. What they all recommended that individuals do is take a hard look at your insurance policies. It's very hit and miss, the coverage, so take a look at your insurance policy, step one. Then go and talk to your insurer and find out what your coverage is specifically. You know, that's the role of insurance companies, is to make sure that they're helping people at times like this. So make sure you take advantage of that. But the straight answer is we want people back in their homes as soon as possible. That's going to depend a bit about when we get some of the debris cleaned up and making sure that we can do it safely.
Thank you, Mayor Scott. And yeah, just to reiterate, to get back to what we talked about at the beginning, when you have a 24-kilometer ice jam, part of that is looking a little bit better. The Clearwater was up about 0.10 of a meter this morning, so 10 centimeters. The Athabasca remains basically stable. So once you see that start to reduce, then you're in a position to think about recovery. But as Mayor Scott says, as soon as we can safely do that, I think that's going to be what happens with the direction of emergency management. So we'll go to our next question. That's okay, and keep them coming in. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We'll make sure to maintain this as a regular feature. So the next one, and I think Matthew already touched on this. This is from Lisa Ham, but maybe you can give just a quick answer into this. How long will we have a water boil advisory? Thank you, Lisa.
The answer to how long we'll have a water advisory in place is as long as is necessary. Alberta Health Services will be the group that will lift that advisory when the water is deemed safe in its state. Of course, as I mentioned before, our staff are working hand in glove with the Alberta Health Services to ensure that operations are such that they will support returning to normal as quickly as possible.
Okay, thank you, Matthew, and thank you once again for the question. Our next question is from Linda Vandenberg. This is a question for the CAO. I think would be best to take this, Jamie. Are the homeless taken care of? So, CAO Doyle, if you'd like to come forward. That's a question from Linda. Are the homeless taken care of?
Thank you, Adam, and thank you, Linda. In a short answer, yes, they are being taken care of. We've been working very closely with the Salvation Army, and their program has been relocated to take care of those needs.
Okay. And we know additionally as well, I know Mayor Scott may have mentioned it off the top, but our partners at the Canadian Red Cross have activated, mobilized for this second state of local emergency that we're under. So that's another resource that we'll be leaning on as a community once again, same as we did after the 2016 wildfire. Our next question is from Richard Adieu, and I'm sorry once again if I mispronounced your name. It's a question from Richard. This will be for the CAO as well. Is the bridge safe? So speaking of our bridges north of downtown, so is the bridge safe?
Thank you again for that question, and I'm sure many of you have seen some very shocking photos over the past few days, one of which I'm sure we've all seen where the ice is jammed right up to the underside of the bridge. I can assure you those bridges are safe. They are designed to do exactly what they're doing. So those structures are incredibly sturdy, and this is exactly what they're there for. So yes, they are safe.
Thank you, Jamie. Thanks once again for the question. So we'll continue on. Make sure to get your question in right there below our live video stream at our RMWB Facebook page. Thanks again for everyone for joining us. This question is from Deanna Roman Smith, probably be for Mr. Huff, our DCAO, and maybe the mayor could weigh in as well. It's a question we're getting from a lot of residents. Deanna says, I don't understand why everyone is evacuated around the hospital and the hospital hasn't been evacuated. So perhaps DCO Huff can speak to that, and Mayor Scott, if you had some thoughts as well.
So our Regional Emergency Coordination Center makes determinations as to what is safe and what is manageable risk. And with regards to residents in that area, they are currently at risk of losing gas, water service, power, and also risk of sanitary sewer backups. We are hopeful that none of that is the case. But in the event that it was, it would be best if the residents in that area were not in their homes. The hospital is a critical piece of infrastructure, and that's why so much additional effort is made to ensure that it is sustained at full capacity. Thank you. Well,
thank you, DCO Huff, and I think I'm going to keep you right here because this is a probably question best for you as well. This one's from Cornell Jarrett, and Cornell asks, where can we get an up to hour or minute update on the water level? So I know that would be with Alberta Environment and Parks. I don't have the address off the top of our heads, but they would be the keepers of that information. But maybe Mr. Huff can weigh in on how that information is generated and what we're seeing with water levels.
So Alberta Environment and Parks certainly do keep significant amounts of data. Our own teams within the RMWB also monitor the river levels in the area. We don't publish that data in real time. Simply, it's just an overwhelming amount of information to process and publish during an unprecedented event like this. However, what I can tell you is the last several hours of monitoring data has indicated that all of the rivers in the vicinity of Fort McMurray have remained stable. We, of course, do not hazard a guess as to whether they will go up or down in the immediate future. Our hope is that they subside quickly.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Cornell. Yeah, I think if you go to the Alberta Environment Parks website, they do have up-to-date information. They update on a regular basis about the level of the rivers and just all across the province. I know as recently as 1:30 today, the government of Alberta put out a situation update, much like they're doing for the COVID pandemic, on some of the rising water levels and our situation here in Wood Buffalo, but also in some other communities in Alberta. And it did have some information there, and you can sign up for that online. That they put out presumably now every day about where those water levels are. So check it out, but if not, call our pulse line and we'll be sure to direct you to the right place. Go to our next question, please. This one's from Corin Krakowski, and I think it'll be for our Deputy Chief Administrative Officer. Why were sandbags not in place sooner if you were monitoring it? Why did we have to get sandbags from Edmonton? So that's good.
In short, we had a stockpile of 8,000 sandbags available to us. But the mobilization of those sandbags, whereas it was done very quickly, was in response to, again, an unprecedented flood event. This is a 1-in-100-year flood, and the placement of those sandbags really was a matter of reaction. They have been fully utilized, and additional sandbags are being brought in for continued use.
Well, thank you, Mr. Huff. And I've been reminded, because I should have remembered, because I've been checking it out myself, rivers.ab.ca or rivers.alberta.ca is where you'll find the up-to-date information on the current water levels of the rivers surrounding our communities, of course, being the confluence of 5 rivers during this 1-in-100-year event. So, Mr. Harrison, thank you. And this question is from Coralie Samarona. Coralie, how you doing? It's great that you could join us. I know we haven't chatted in a while. One of my fellow colleagues here at the RMB. Hope you're holding up okay and hope you're staying safe. Good to talk to you through this method. I hope we can catch up soon. Coralie's question is the power and gas off downtown? So we'll ask the CAO or the ECAO to take that. I know there were some announcements recently on Grayling Terrace, so we'll allow you to take that.
Yeah, so utilities are off in specific areas, and those areas have been identified in our information notices that have been circulated. The latest that will be without gas is Grayling Terrace. So those in that situation have been provided a voluntary evacuation notice as well.
Okay, thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Coralie, for the question. Good to see you. Next question is from Rick Holbert, and I think this will be one for our CAO, Jamie Doyle. So kind of a two-part question, so I'll read both, Rick, if you don't mind. Number one, can you clarify if you are calling in the military, and if not, what is it going to take for that to happen? I know Mayor Scott made some remarks about that off the top, but allow CAO Doyle to take that, and as Mayor would like to as well on the back end of it. And the second question, Jamie, from Rick. Are evacuees in hotels going to be allowed to stay in the hotels or forced to leave in the middle of a pandemic? So kind of a question first about the military aspect, our Canadian Armed Forces, and kind of emergency social services piece from Rick. So thank you. Sorry, the first one?
Just leave the question.
I'll leave the question there. For good idea. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you, Rick. What I'll do is I'll answer the second part first, and that's a very good question. It's something that our Emergency Social Services group are still exploring and still trying to understand, so stay tuned for that message. As for the first one, what I want to say is there's been a lot of articles and things on social media we have seen about military deployment to our region to help with the flood. Our mayor and council certainly do not want to leave any stone unturned when it comes to the health and well-being and safety of this community. Over the past 72 hours, what I've seen is the strength of our employees, the strength of our community, the strength of our contractor community, and certainly the strength of our industry partners. They want to get this job done, and they will help us. So at this point in time, we're not requiring the use of military resource. I still want to stress the importance of it, and it's still certainly available to us. Our provincial partners as well as our federal partners have assured us if and when we need military support, we certainly put in the request to the proper channels and we'll get what we need. I still want to thank everybody that's been involved. The last 3 days have been quite a show of hands willing to help as well as partners willing to help us. And Mayor, you want to say something?
Yeah, sure. Hi everyone again. I just want to add a few comments to that. I want to be really clear because I think there's been some confusion about what the provincial position on this has been. I'm going to read you a note that was sent by Premier Kenney to me this morning. It says, if you give us clear tasks and estimate a scale for Canadian Armed Forces deployment and make a formal request, we will endorse it with the feds. So I think what it's fair to say is your mayor and council want everything to be done that is necessary to look after the residents in this region. We have an administrative team, including a director of emergency management, who are authorized to take whatever steps are necessary. So at this time, they've determined that the use of military is not necessary, but that's, that can be reevaluated ongoing. I think one of the factors in that, it's fair to say, is that we have had a tremendous outpouring of offers of assistance, including from our industrial partners. Industry in this region is second to none in assistance, especially when it comes to this community. So it's going to be reevaluated on an ongoing basis. The province and the federal government have both indicated a strong willingness to deploy if requested to do so. It's something I was very keen on initially, but now that we've had all these various offers of assistance, it looks like we are headed in a good place. I also want to take this as a moment to read to you another note that the Premier sent to me this morning that I think might be very revealing about how the rest of Canada is thinking about us during this time. He sent me this note. So this is from Premier Kenney. He said, Don, this text is from the Newfoundland Premier Dwight Ball, and he just wanted to pass it on. I'm going to read it out because I think our friends in Newfoundland, and there's many obviously who live here. So this is the text. It says, thinking of our families and friends in Fort McMurray today, obviously lots of additional stresses on top of the impacts of COVID-19 and what happened with the forest fires. Dwight. So, we're going to reach out and make sure that the Premier of Newfoundland knows how much we appreciate those very kind words. I thank the Premier for relaying the message. And now everyone who's paying attention to this, please spread the word that Premier Dwight Ball sent a very kind message of best wishes to all the people here. And there's many from Newfoundland, but I think it's to all of us who are impacted by this. And they are obviously, we're in their hearts and minds back there. I can say this as well. We have received an amazing outpouring of support from our neighboring municipalities. There has been a tremendous number of offers of support in every way possible. So, this municipality has looked after Canada for a very long time in terms of financial support and in other ways. Now it's the rest of Canada who are once again looking after us. And I would encourage any Canadian who is catching this, who is wondering how they can donate. The Red Cross is back. They are looking after this region as they did during the wildfire. So consider a donation to the Red Cross. They will make sure the money is going to those who need it in this region. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Scott. And just before we move on to our next question, I know right before we went on live here on Facebook here this afternoon, Mayor Scott, you were mentioning the support of our First Nation and Indigenous partners and some of their efforts. I don't know if you want to make a comment about that as well in just a minute. Okay, so we're going to go to our next question first. But I know we wanted to make sure to express that gratitude as well to ATC and all of our Indigenous partners in the community for everything they're doing as well, alongside all of our other volunteer staff and community partners. So next question is from Natalia Corridor-Hilliard with Rogers Broadcasting. Natalia, how you doing? So her question is there any concern about food and supplies with 4 of our grocery stores closed? Perhaps our CAO can take that. Jamie?
Thank you for the question. It's something that we're currently monitoring with our RECC team. If and when anything needs to be actioned, we'll certainly do so.
So thanks for that, Natalia, and thanks, Jamie. And certainly concerned as well as we deal with response to the unprecedented COVID-19 pandemic. Thankfully, the weather is getting a little bit warmer, so some of those lineups outside will be a little bit better for all of us. Next question is from Karen Groundwater. Karen is asking, how long after the water issue is over will it take to get the businesses up and running? So perhaps we'll go back to our CAO perhaps for that. Question from Karen here. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Karen, for that question. It's a tricky question, just like the re-entry into people's homes. We want to make sure that we're doing so expeditiously, but also safely. And safety is certainly a paramount activity, re-entry. We'll work closely with our RECC friends as well as our Wood Buffalo Economic Development Corporation to help out. So it's something that we're going to monitor, and we're going to do so as expeditiously as possible, but also keeping safety in mind.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you, CAO Doyle. So our next question here is from Chantel Tate. Chantel asks, what is the situation with the bridge? Do you think community members living on the north side of the bridge will have to evacuate if the water level rises to a center level? So maybe we'll go to our DCAO, Mr. Huff, Matthew Huff, to take that. Thank you, Chantal.
Thank you for the question. I'll speak to the bridge spans themselves. They are designed to withstand the ice flow pressures that are occurring at this time. Should there be a need to close the bridge, it would likely be because ice would be overtopping the side of the bridge. It doesn't mean that the bridge itself would be at any more risk than it is right now. At the moment, though, we're not seeing the water level rise, which suggests to us that all north of the bridge are just fine. I think, though, that I would be remiss if I didn't mention that traveling in the COVID-19 environment is still the same as what it was previous to the flood. Not recommended if you don't have to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew, and thank you for the question. We recognize that our Government of Alberta partners have went live with their COVID-19 updates, Dr. Hinshaw as well as Premier Kenney, so we know our numbers are dropping a little bit, understandably, as we deal with both that pandemic as well as our response to this 1-in-100-year flood event. So we recognize that some people are going to have to leave, but for those of us joining us, thank you for staying with us. We're going to stay for the rest of the hour and answer any questions you might have. So we're going to go to our next set of questions, if I can just get the next one there. Thank you. This question's from Bobby Piercy. Bobby asks, there's a water supplier in town charging more than normal. Is the RMWB prepared to address this issue with suppliers? So I'll probably make that a dual. The CAO would like to take a piece of it, and then Mayor Scott. So Jamie, if you go first.
Thank you, Adam. It's something where this question is actually quite relevant, as I've seen some of it yesterday. We're monitoring those prices, and we understand there's a cost to get goods and services into our region, especially in this pandemic as well as the flood. However, price gouging will not be tolerated. Under a state of local emergency, we have the authority and will certainly exercise it to step in and regulate prices on things like water if it escalates too quickly and it's unreasonable.
Thank you so much for that, CAO Doyle, and I think Mayor Scott would like to weigh in as well.
Yeah, I'd love to weigh in on this. It is improper and illegal to gouge during a state of local emergency. So if you hear that somebody is raising prices improperly, or if something looks ridiculous, and I've seen some examples of that, send a comment to bylaw. Let them know about it so that we can investigate and take action. No one can gouge prices during a state of local emergency. And if we see it, we're going to do something about it. And I'm going to remember any business that does that or anyone that does that. So please report it if you see it.
Well, thank you, Mayor Scott. And I know from our past telephone town halls, you've heard from our Director of Emergency Management, Scott Davis, that himself, the RECC team, that's our Regional Emergency Coordination Center and Bylaw Services, already under the SOL for COVID-19, have been doing patrols of the community, going into stores to make sure those regulations are followed. So I think the message is pretty loud and clear from them, as well as Mayor Scott and CIO Doyle. So we go to our next question. This question's from Kenneth Taylor. Kenneth, thanks for joining us. Moving forward with the lessons learned from this flood, will the municipality, the city, be increasing the flood mitigation berm in all areas of the city? I'll let the Deputy Chief Administrative Officer, Matthew Huff, take that. Thank you, Kenneth.
The easy answer is yes. The more complicated answer is that the flood mitigation program itself is only partially complete. The RNWB, with some funding from the provincial government as well, has spent over $150 million on flood mitigation measures. We have in the budget a significant amount of money that we will be spending over the next couple of years to complete this project. In all, there will be about $300 million spent on flood mitigation of this area. We are confident of the performance of the berms thus far, and will, of course, analyze the data from this flood and ensure that whatever is built is going to protect the city in the future.
I just wanted to add to that comment that we had a very good discussion with Bill Blair, who's the Federal Minister of Public Safety yesterday, so that's the federal government. They indicated that they're going to take a hard look at ways that they can come in and assist this community with flood mitigation in the future. So, and we've already had that discussion, and we're starting that discussion with the federal government as well. So there's more to come on that, but I'm feeling optimistic about the discussions I've had, and obviously there's a lot more work to be done.
So thank you, Mayor Scott. And just a reminder to everyone that's following along, this video in its entirety will be available following this live broadcast here on Facebook, on our Facebook page, the municipality's Facebook page. So if you're just joining us now and you want to catch all the questions that were asked by your fellow residents, our participants, community members here online, that will be available immediately following today's Facebook Live. Of course, we'll be back again tomorrow as we make this a regular part of everything we're doing to communicate with you, as well as our telephone town halls on Thursday night. Of course, this week we'll switch the focus from COVID-19 to flood response. So we'll go to our next question. This one's from Ray Poitras, and I think probably best as well for the Deputy Chief Administrative Officer. We spoke into this a little earlier, but this is the point we want to keep talking about. Ray asks, can we get an update on the river water levels and speed? Is it getting higher or lower?
So again, I reviewed the data that has been gathered since 11 a.m. this morning, and which is taken every 15 minutes, and the levels have remained the same, just shy of that 250 meter 1 in 100 year flood level. As far as accessing that data, Adam spoke to Alberta Environment's webpage earlier. The RMWB does maintain this data as well, but we don't publish it in real time.
Okay. And Thanks for that, Matthew. And I thought just to reiterate the website, if you go to rivers.alberta.ca, you can find the most up-to-date information about the water levels as well as any issues along those lines. So rivers.alberta.ca, as I continue to struggle to say that, but that's where you get the latest information. But we'll continue to share that information as much as possible. Go to our next question. This one's from Shannon Reardon. And I think this will be for our Chief Administrative Officer, if Jamie's there. Shannon asks, is Highway 63 in jeopardy? And what is your plan if it floods? So we'll go Jamie.
Thank you, Shannon, for the question. Currently, it's not in jeopardy, and if it was, we would certainly work with RECC and our provincial partners to outline a plan to deal with that if it was the issue.
So thank you, Shannon. I know we're going to go to our next set of questions. We have about approximately 10 minutes remaining here on this Facebook Live, here on the municipality's Facebook page as we answer questions. If you want to get in a question, make sure to do that just below the video. You type in your comment. We have a team here trying to couple the themes as much as possible. We know we're not going to get to everybody's question, but we're going to make sure this maintains a regular feature as part of how we're communicating. Thank you. This question is from Natasha Forbes, once again about water. Natasha asks, is there sewage in our tap water? When will it be fixed?
The answer to whether sewage is in the tap water is no. There isn't. There is, of course, concern in flooded area that sanitary sewer may be backing up in some spots, but not where people are currently receiving potable water. The contaminants in the water itself is silt itself, and that's why the boil water advisory is in place. So as per my comments earlier, make sure that you boil the water before consuming it, and look at Alberta Health Services website for full directions as to how to manage with the water as in its current form. Thanks.
Thank you, Matthew, and thank you, Natasha, for the question. So our next question is from Skylar Leah. Why is the water compromised? We're all aware of the boil water advisory. We're looking for why it occurred. So Matthew, maybe share like how that happens in a situation like this with our residents.
The truth of the matter is that the water is compromised because this is an unprecedented flooding event. The water treatment plant staff are working very quickly to ensure that the water is as pure as that which was delivered to homes before the flood itself. Now, I don't want to predict how long the boil water advisory will be in place. The important takeaway is to ensure that that water is boiled, then that you follow the directions on the AHS website until the advisory is lifted. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Huff, and thank you for the questions. We're going to go to our next set of questions, probably about 5 more minutes here on this Facebook Live. Happy to join you once again. Again, if you have a question you want to get it in, please get it in now, just below the video stream in the comments section. This question is from Donna Guillemot, and I think that we'll go to the CAO for this. Is it possible to have a short update put on this page every morning around 6 a.m., just so we know what happened overnight? Okay, we'll go to the CAO, Jamie Doyle, and I know that's something that can certainly be looked at, but we'll have a CAO look into that.
Thank you, Donna. We're looking at providing updates more on a daily, regular update. We're also hearing loud and clear from many of you that there's a thirst for more information, so we're going to increase our updates outward. Also tune into our town halls that we have regularly, as well as we're going to be updating our web page to be a bit more informative and easier to find.
Thanks for that, Donna. Certainly we'll pass that along to hardworking staff in the Regional Emergency Coordination Center. Okay, so, and of course, we'll mention before our next question comes back here, I'll just also mention there's a new thing that was just recently announced, rmwb.ca/flood update. So you can go there to sign up to get updates via email. Of course, you go to rmwb.ca. All the latest updates are there as well. Follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. We'll continue to work with our incredible media partners locally as well as across the province and the country to get that information out to you as best as possible. So thank you. This question is from Renee. Renee is asking, what's the forecast when we can go back to our houses? So I guess we'll go to the ECAO, and Mr. Huff, if you want to take that.
We all want people back in their homes as soon as possible. That will depend on how quickly the flood water recedes and how quickly the downtown area can be brought back to full operation. So I wish that I had a crystal ball and I could say how many days that would be. Suffice it to say that we are all watching with bated breath for Mother Nature to turn that river into water again. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Renee, and thank you, Matthew. We're going to take maybe a few more questions, and we'll probably have some brief closing remarks from Mayor Scott. So we could have our next question or two. Thanks again, online, everyone that's joined us here today. Really appreciate it. This question is from Hazel Cheeseman, and I think it's going to go to the CAO, Mr. Jamie Doyle. Are there hotel rooms available in the Fort McMurray area? So maybe, Jamie, you can give me an update on those numbers if you have them. I know that we started out with, I think, a bit over about 6,000 rooms available between hotel accommodations as well as our work camp accommodations, but we probably have an up-to-date number. Jamie?
Thank you, Adam. Thank you for the question. We're getting a lot of questions about hotels and what's available and when people can stay and leave. We currently, last number I have, we are full from our hotels locally. Our rooms are full. However, there's also hotels that are being used in other communities. And I also want people to understand, we're insisting that hotels not evict people tomorrow, that we're going to be paying for another 7 days to help deal with some of these, some evacuees and some residents. I would caution and suggest, as Mayor suggested in the start, that everybody renew or look at their insurance policy to make sure that they're not missing out on anything there as well.
Okay, everybody, thank you, Jamie, and thank you, Hazel, for the question. That'll be our last question as part of today's Facebook Live. Before I turn things over to Mayor Scott for some brief closing remarks, I just want to thank all of you for joining us here today. We'll be back again tomorrow at a time that we'll announce. This will become a regular feature of everything that we're doing to communicate with you about this 1 in 100 year flood event as we continue against the backdrop of that, as well as a response to COVID-19. So to close things out, I thank our CAO, Jamie Doyle, our DCAO, Matthew Huff, all of our hardworking staff and volunteers, all of our partners helping us through this, all levels of government, and our First Nations and Indigenous partners as well for everything they're doing. Thank you all, and I'll hand things over to Mayor Scott for some closing remarks.
Thanks very much. And I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that our rural and Indigenous partners have really stepped forward. There's so many people in this community who have stepped forward to assist those of us who are being evacuated, those who are impacted by this flood. I want to thank them all. ATC in particular has come forward and helped. I know Chief Adam was one of the first phone calls that I received. He wanted to go out there and dynamite the ice jam himself. So there's been a lot of great ideas that have been thrown at me. Some of them we haven't been able to employ, even though I'd love to. But for all those who have come forward and offered their help, I am so very grateful. We have received literally, I would say, thousands of offers of assistance as far as goods and services and volunteerism. There's going to be a lot of opportunities to volunteer going forward. We are going to, no doubt, need help getting through this, and I'm just so grateful for all the companies and all the others who have looked after those who were evacuated and all those who are on the front lines of this, including our firefighters and our RCMP and those who are working in the regional emergency coordination center. So to all of you, thank you so very much. We're deeply grateful. To all those of you who are impacted by this, please stay strong. Let's face this with courage, just like we do every other challenge that we ever have faced. If there's one thing I can say about the people of this region is we know how to get through a challenge. We've done it before, and we're going to do it again. So please stay safe, stay strong, everyone, and we'll be doing this again tomorrow. All the best.